The skies over Europe are no longer just flight paths, they're battlegrounds. Commercial jets are being rerouted, GPS signals jammed, and airline crews forced to fly blind through hostile airspace. NATO has issued a chilling warning to Russia: stop these hybrid attacks, or face consequences that could echo across the continent. In today's video, we're diving deep into a brewing crisis, one where the clash isn't happening on the ground, but above it. From Kaliningrad's covert operations to Putin's strategic mind games, we're going to unpack why this silent war matters and what could happen next. Stay tuned. What's happening at 30,000 feet could redefine global security. NATO has issued one of its strongest warnings yet to Russia and President Vladimir Putin: stop jamming GPS signals on civilian aircraft in the Baltic region, or face a serious response. This isn't a diplomatic whisper, it's a strategic shout. The jamming, most notably emanating from Kaliningrad, Russia's heavily armed exclave wedged between Poland and Lithuania, has disrupted the navigation systems of countless commercial flights. These aren't just minor glitches. We're talking reroutes, emergency landings, and potential mid-air collisions. Estonia in particular has seen significant disruption, and airline operators are sounding the alarm. Now here's where things get really serious. NATO has made it clear: if a civilian jet crashes because of Russian interference, it won't be treated as an unfortunate accident. It'll be classified as an act of war. That declaration alone escalates the situation from troubling to potentially explosive. NATO's response could begin with an increase in military support to Ukraine, tighter economic sanctions, and even more aggressive posturing in Eastern Europe. But if Russia continues pushing the envelope, we could be looking at targeted strikes, sabotage missions, air attacks on Kaliningrad's electronic warfare hubs, or broader military operations designed to dismantle Russia's hybrid warfare capabilities. Kaliningrad itself is a geopolitical powder keg. It's home to the Baltic Fleet, nuclear missile bases, and a dense network of jamming and surveillance equipment. It acts as Russia's strategic launch pad into the Baltic region, capable of projecting military power across NATO borders. But it's not just a physical threat. It's symbolic. Attacking Kaliningrad, or even threatening it, sends a message not just to Moscow, but to every country watching Europe's shifting security landscape. And here's the twist: Putin may be trying to provoke just such a move. His strategy seems calculated: bait NATO members, especially smaller states like Estonia, Latvia, or Poland, into striking first. That way, Russia can frame its retaliation as self-defense and avoid triggering a full-scale Article 5 response. Article 5, NATO's Collective Defense Clause, requires member nations to defend one another if attacked. But if the first shot comes from a member state, Putin could argue the situation doesn't qualify. It's a clever loophole, one that relies on ambiguity and delays to fracture NATO's unity. At the same time, Russia's campaign isn't limited to electronic jamming. There's an entire parallel front unfolding through politics, propaganda, and destabilization. Extremist parties in Europe, many backed by Russian funding or influence, push divisive narratives. Disinformation floods social media. Public trust erodes. It's modern warfare without missiles or tanks. It's a battlefield of ideas, and Russia's playing long-game chess while NATO scrambles to guard its pieces. What's NATO to do? Unity is key. But maintaining that unity is harder than ever in a fractured geopolitical world. The United States has signaled stronger support, especially in light of past reluctance to get involved in localized European tensions. Still, the challenge remains. How do you respond decisively to hybrid warfare without triggering the escalation that Putin clearly wants? Let's talk about hybrid warfare for a moment. GPS jamming is just one form, but it's incredibly impactful. It blurs the line between military and civilian targets. It disrupts everyday life, not just for soldiers, but for families, tourists, business travelers. Think about it. One failed signal, one bad reroute, and an airliner could be heading into restricted airspace or a potential collision course. Every pilot who's lost signal above Estonia, every airport that's had to delay or cancel flights, they're all part of this growing tension, where invisible interference could spark very real tragedy. And the stakes aren't just political or military, they're human. What happens if a plane goes down? What's the protocol? Who takes responsibility? NATO's message is clear: Russia will. And that's why this moment matters. Because for all the posturing and maneuvering, it only takes one mistake to shift history, one tragedy to rewrite the rules. Then there's Kaliningrad's deeper role. It's not just a military outpost, it's a narrative tool. In Putin's worldview, Kaliningrad represents strength, defiance, and reach. It's Russia's hand in NATO's pocket, but it's also vulnerable. Jamming signals might be the tip of the iceberg. If NATO decides to strike back, they won't just aim to shut down interference. They'll aim to undercut the myth of Russian invincibility. Precision strikes on Kaliningrad's infrastructure would send a loud message. Your provocations have consequences. That said, NATO won't act recklessly. Any response will be measured, likely phased. Sanctions first, increased defense aid to Ukraine, intensified surveillance, cyber countermeasures. Only after those steps would direct military action be considered. And even then, it would be targeted, strategic, and aimed at degrading capabilities without sparking outright war. But it's a dangerous game, because Putin's whole strategy may be built on escalation, create tension, wait for a response, call it an attack, retaliate, divide NATO from within. It's chess, not checkers, and the board is littered with civilian risks. Meanwhile, the airspace isn't getting any safer. Pilots report interference with altitude readings, flight paths, even landing signals. The potential for disaster is growing, and while the public may not grasp the technicalities of signal jamming, they understand danger and fear and instability. That's why this moment feels so urgent. At its heart, this isn't just a military story. It's about how modern warfare touches everyday life. It's about how strategy, policy, and interference impact people who are just trying to fly from point A to point B. It's about how global power struggles can manifest as delayed flights, frightened passengers, and nations on edge. And while Putin may hope to exploit NATO's internal politics, hoping that hesitation and disagreement will create space for aggression, the alliance is well aware of the stakes. Recent moves suggest renewed solidarity. From joint exercises to intelligence sharing to diplomatic coordination, NATO is working hard to stay ahead of the curve. Still, Kaliningrad remains the flashpoint, and as long as Russia continues its GPS jamming, the potential for conflict grows. The West knows it, Russia knows it, and pilots flying through Baltic airspace feel it every day. So what happens next? NATO will likely intensify warnings. Countries affected may consider their own countermeasures. Conversations around Article 5 and NATO's rules of engagement will dominate policy circles. Meanwhile, public awareness will grow. News segments, aviation alerts, geopolitical analyses, all pointing to the same truth. We're entering a new phase of confrontation, one that doesn't begin with boots on the ground, but with bits in the air. And in that context, every flight, every signal, every disruption becomes part of the story. Because this isn't just about military assets anymore. It's about credibility, cohesion, and control. Russia's hybrid warfare has thrown down the gauntlet. Now NATO must decide how and when to pick it up. This is more than just interference. It's a calculated strategy to provoke fear, fracture alliances, and blur the lines between peace and war. As Russia pushes its hybrid warfare to new heights, NATO faces a defining test. Respond with strength without triggering escalation. We're watching the front lines shift, not with troops or tanks, but with signals, satellites, and split-second decisions. And the consequences? Potentially global. If this breakdown helped make sense of the tension brewing above Europe, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more insights into how power, politics, and warfare are changing right in front of us. Let's keep exposing the stories that shape our world, one signal at a time.